Hi everybody, today I'm taking another look at Dien, the War in Indochina, published by S.D.C. in the 6th issue of Conflict magazine way back in 1973. It looked like this. Flying Buffalo republished it a few years later with a different subtitle, The Strategic Game of Indochina, 1950 to 1955. So you might be wondering what brought me here. A couple things actually. I like the old S.D.C series. The ones I've already reviewed for this channel don't even require dice. And I appreciate that design philosophy. I made videos of the Alamo one and the NORAD game. Both of them are easy to learn and fun to play, and certainly nothing like the war games you see nowadays. And that's how I would also characterize Dien Bien Phu. Today it's obscure and largely forgotten, so sign me up. I argue this one is different in a good way, asymmetrical, unpredictable, and interesting. So let me show you how it works. But before I begin, I have to let you know that my copy is 100% print and play, so official versions might look slightly different. The good news is that you can find high quality PDFs of everything off the internet, and you could print in sections, blow the map way up to any size if you really wanted. By the way, the whole activity in this case was super easy, and I like the way it turned out. It's not always like that if you're into print and play projects. Sometimes they can be a big pain in the butt, but not this one. And yes, I would also buy an official copy for the right price. Anyway, the point is, if you like what you see and you want to try it, you have options. In this video, I explain the map features and unit characteristics. I quickly cover the victory conditions, turn sequence, movement and combat mechanics, and I end the video with some commentary on the rules, general feel of gameplay, and some other final thoughts. Okay, so it's a two-player affair. The red player controls the Viet Minh, and the blue player controls the French. The map is a very basic depiction of southern China and the northern provinces of Laos and Vietnam. There is a turn, track, and reinforcement schedule on the left side of the board. More on that later. The victory conditions are as follows. The Viet Minh win if they can eliminate 3 French regular units in a single turn. Not all French units in the game are regular French army. The Viet Minh can also win if they capture and hold for 1 turn, either Hanoi or Haiphong, or they can win if they hold more provinces than the French after 14 turns. The French side wins if they can eliminate 5 red units in a single turn, regular or otherwise, or the French can win if they capture and hold for 1 turn all 6 provinces bordering China, or the French can win at the end of 14 turns if they control more provinces than the Reds. They also win if the controlled province count ends in a tie. There are 20 provinces in total. The game comes with control markers. They just look like red squares. If no units are in a province at the end of a turn, then control goes to the last side that was in control. If both sides have units in a province, then neither side has control. And how is that possible? Well, each province has 2 parts, the countryside and then the gray square in it. And these areas are meant to represent major cities and or airfields. You could have a situation where the French are penned up in a city, but the Viet Minh maintain control of the countryside. So that would be an uncontrolled state. It's important to note the Viet Minh never just occupy cities with their units. They do attack into them, however. Also, with regular units, there are no stacking limits whatsoever, so either side can super stack any province if they want. Other map details: the blue shaded areas denote coastal and or riverine provinces, and the 3 striped provinces, including Hanoi, are part of what the French called de Lettre line, heavily fortified areas named after a general. So what are the significance of these details? The French units get a defensive bonus in cities. They can also ignore retreat results up to a point in cities, and they also have limited airlift capabilities in cities. French units inside the fortified provinces of Hanoi, Haiphong, and Tay Bin also get a defensive bonus. Further, the riverine provinces lend great mobility to certain French units, which appear as DNA or naval assault divisions in the game. More on specific unit characteristics later, because you really need the turn sequence first to get a better idea of how the game is going to flow. It comes with setup instructions and initial deployments for each side. It's easy to follow. The map will look like this at the start of the game. Notice a few red squares and otherwise empty provinces. These control markers show areas that are technically under the control of the Viet Minh, even though they don't actually have units deployed in them at the outset. The sequence of play is as follows. French place reinforcements. French place replacements in blue shaded areas under French control. Viet Minh deploy their reinforcements. Viet Minh then place replacements in areas bordering China. Viet Minh place supply markers. Then both sides secretly plot movement orders. And finally, you have to resolve combat based on the results of movement. So from the top, what are reinforcements? If you look on the table to the left of the map, you see units lined up that enter the game for both sides on specific turns. These are the reinforcements that enter the game after turn 1. The replacement schedule on the far left refers to killed off units that may be brought back into the game or reformed from the dead pile. The Viet Minh can do this with 1 unit every other turn, while the French can only reform 5 units over the course of the entire game. The column of 2s represent the number of supply tokens the Viet Minh player gets each turn. Each star counter represents 1 unit of supply. To launch an attack, the Viet Minh player must spend a supply token. 1 supply counter supports 2 regular Viet Minh units in an attack. There is no supply cost to red for defending a province, however. The French, on the other hand, never have this worry. They are adequately supplied throughout the game. Plotting movement is the next step. If you've ever played the game Diplomacy, you will quickly understand what is going on here. It's almost the same process with just a few extra details to consider. The game comes with handy charts for each player to use as they program and record moves for all their units every turn. This is the point where we have to consider some of the varied unit characteristics. As mentioned before, each side has regular army and irregular guerrilla forces. Irregulars have the large I on the counter, so they are easily distinguishable. But they enter the game after the first turn, so we'll focus on what the regular army units do first. French Foreign Legion demi-brigades, colonial regulars, and regimental combat teams can move 1 space per turn under normal conditions. Viet Minh half divisions, independent regulars, and supply units can move up to 2 provinces per turn. French naval assault divisions, the 4 DNA units, can move from any 1 blue province or city to any other blue province or city, including the 3 fortified provinces per turn, and they can carry 1 regular unit with them. So this simulates river gunboats in use, like the ones that you see in every classic Vietnam War movie. Consequently, they can never go beyond this water network into the interior of Vietnam, but as they move, they can ignore the presence of any red units along the way. The Viet Minh can't block river transport. The French also have 2 GAPs, or airborne battle groups. These are the parachute counters. 1 parachute counter can be deployed to anywhere or redeployed to anywhere else each turn. And there's one more thing. The French get 1 airlift per turn from 1 city to any other 1 city that is either French controlled or has at least 1 French unit in it. So if ever French units are surrounded in a city in the interior of Vietnam, there is at least a limited ability to fly some assets in or out each turn. That takes care of the regular forces. The irregular units are even easier to manage. They don't even have spaces on the movement order sheets. They can't move once they are placed. They can't be placed in cities, only in provinces. You can only have 2 per area max. They don't retreat either. So if they're forced to as a result of combat resolution, they are eliminated instead. They don't block movement of enemy units either. So you might think, well, what use are they? Well, like any other unit in the game, they do have a base combat strength of 1, and you can place them behind enemy lines or have them pop up at the most inconvenient times and places as far as your opponent is concerned. The idea is to have them combine unexpectedly with your regulars in areas where the enemy is under strength. They don't use up supply counters on the Viet Minh side either. All these movement rules might be confusing at the start, but in practice, they're not hard to remember. If anything, they seem intuitive. The game comes with vector arrows for each side too, so that also helps depicting movement on the map when it comes to resolving the various plots. Now, as you can imagine, especially if you've ever played Diplomacy, the player's various combinations of simultaneous moves may open a giant can of worms on the map. Not always, but definitely sometimes. The good news is the instructions have a series of helpful diagrams that make sense of and interpret the outcomes of complex encounters. In fact, these pictures are the best part of the rules, in my opinion. They cover all the different variables and possibilities, as far as I can tell. One interesting feature you can see at the top left is if 2 equal forces meet head on, they don't trade positions. The Viet Minh player does, however, get an initiative advantage because they get to decide where the battle takes place. They can defend at their point of origin with no supply cost, or they can contest the French point of origin, but for a cost in supply. As you can see, there are solutions for more complicated scenarios, but it's all intuitive, and you'll see it makes sense. I should mention, though, overall, the rule set is a bit of a mixed bag as far as clarity is concerned. I would read the official rules once with an open laptop, take notes, and reorganize as you go. You might end up with a more helpful two-page summary like the one that I use. I don't often see something like this where like 5/7 of the information is very clear and concise, and then a smaller portion of the rules seem more disorganized. Usually it's all one way or the other. The explanation of how cities work, for example, it's an annoying, slow drip of information. It's just weird. Anyway, if you read the rules carefully, you'll get it. So the last thing you need to know about the gameplay is combat resolution, and it's very straightforward and easy. Every unit in the game has a strength of 1, except for the supply tokens, which don't have any combat value. They merely allow the Reds to attack out of a province. The French get +1 combat odds for defending the Delettre line and a +1 for defending a city. If any encounter ends up being 1-to-1 odds, the players consult a combat resolution matrix and play a mini variant game of rock, paper, scissors, dynamite. Each side chooses a number, cross-reference the results. You can see here the various matrix outcomes, attacker or defender losses combined with the possibility of retreats. I actually really enjoy this part of the game. It's fun to play out. Retreats, though, are often no joke in this game. Supply tokens are eliminated in retreats. All irregular units are eliminated by retreats. French units may be forced to retreat into cities where they may ignore all further retreats, but if they ever face 3-to-1 odds in subsequent attacks in defensive cities, at that point, they're simply wiped out completely. Attacks at 2-to-1 odds result in automatic defender retreats. Attacks at 1-to-2 odds result in automatic attacker retreats. And anything that involves 3-to-1 odds or 1-to-3 odds is going to see at least one side destroyed. And that's it. That's how you play Dien Bien Phu. So how is it in practice? Well, the first thing you might notice is that the title is a bit of a misnomer. Dien Bien Phu itself is well far away from the French power base. In this game, it doesn't seem very likely to ever be a focal point in this particular setup. There's nothing about it that would suggest the French should stake their entire war effort on it. The French can concentrate a lot of firepower in the coastal territories with little difficulty, not deep in the interior where the Viet Minh seem to have a clear advantage. So if you're looking for a static State of Siege style game based off the historical narrative, you probably aren't going to get it here. What you will get instead is something that feels more like a cross between two-player diplomacy and football strategy of all things. And what I mean by that is it's got that same I know that you know that I know mind trap thing going on right from the start of the game that lasts all the way to the finish. It's not unlike that test of wills, matching of wits you get on the gridiron. So I'll give you an example of what I mean. On the very first turn, the Viet Minh can threaten Hanoi with practically everything they have available. The French would need to defend Hanoi with 40% of their entire army just to ensure they don't get hit with 2-to-1 odds. So knowing this should mean the French can't really overreach on their first turn unless they want to risk losing the most important province at the start of the game. But the French also know the Viet Minh know an all-out opening Hanoi gambit would then preclude a much larger, more fruitful, less risky invasion of the lightly defended interior from the north by the Viet Minh. So knowing this, the French should not then really sweat the security of Hanoi at the outset and just try to deploy some of their forces into the countryside ahead of the Viet Minh so they don't wind up surrendering the entire interior for nothing. The problem is the Viet Minh know this. So maybe the Reds instead launch an offensive down the center of the map, west of Tai Binh but east of Laos, thereby cutting off any French colonial regulars rushed to the interior to parry an expected blow that doesn't come. The whole game is this way. So some people think this dynamic makes the entire experience too chaotic, and I get it, but I still think it's really fun. And I'll also say this, it has great play-by-mail, play-by-email potential. So that's a big plus to me. Finally, though, I should also mention several people who have played this game do criticize the special victory conditions. And yeah, they do seem rather pie in the sky, especially the French taking all the territory that borders China. I just can't imagine the sequence of events that would lead to that kind of outcome. Most games of Dien Bien Phu will last the full 14 turns, unless one side guesses wrong the entire game with their strategic moves and constantly gets hosed by the one-to-one combat resolution matrix. So there you have it, another largely forgotten winner by S.D.C from 50 years ago that anyone can still play and enjoy today. And I don't want to say more about it at this time because with my next video, I want to make a turn summary simulated two-player session report video on this very game. And I'll add some audiovisual flair with some strategy discussions and see what I can come up with. So I hope you stay tuned for that. And as always, thanks for watching.